stabbed them up and we threw them into these rivers. They were begging for their lives. Begging for their lives. When my parents came from Puerto Rico, there was already gangs established here.
In terms of like Lower East Side, that's really where like the Black Hand started, the connection between the Jews and the Italians, you know, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Al Capone, all of that. So there's always been that long history on the Lower East Side of every immigrant group that came here.
Why did all of the different groups who came through the Lower East Side form gangs?
I can only keep it in the eye. As soon as my parents got together and their marriage lasted only for a little season, and when they were separated, I was still young. So that left a void in my heart as far as the father figure goes. And so immediately I began to, you know, search for a father figure. But I went to all the wrong places. And back in the late 60s and early 70s, what you had now was an explosion. There was gangs all over the place. You understand? And so I was looking up to these corner drug dealers and these gangbangers, you know, hanging out in the corners, you know, and I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be accepted.
What age does that start? Like you becoming aware that there's gangs on the street and that the gangs have some respect?
In my case, it was around 10, 11 years old. I didn't want to listen to what my older brothers and what my mother had to say. I took off to the streets.
Do you think that Hollywood romanticizing of the gang life actually affects people at street level?
Actually, it does. The Warriors came out. Oh, forget about it. That brought more gangs into the boroughs. I'm talking about the 5 boroughs. More gangs started evolving.
Did the kids have any role in the gang at that age of being 11 or so?
Well, certainly, you know, within the drug world, it wasn't unusual, or even in the gang world, for the younger kids to actually be the couriers of the drugs. And they would go to Queens or somewhere else and buy the drugs, and they would get the kids to bring them back because the kids were sort of safe in terms of the police, because the police would leave them alone. So kids were kind of an integral part of street life anyway. I mean, almost the whole culture of the Lower East Side, in one way or another, was connected to drugs.
All the gang leaders that I looked up to when I was a kid are now dead. They're gone. They died violently. They died of drug overdoses. And these were the people that I was looking up to.
So you enter the gang life at around 11 or 12. Does the gang life live up to your ideal of it?
As a gang member at 12, you want to impress the older members. So you want to go out there and you want to steal. You want to rob car wheels, hubcaps. You want to rob bodegas. All right? You want to rob the next man. You understand? Because you want to show them that you can earn for them. You understand? That you can grow in their gang. You understand? You want to make yourself look good, especially in front of the leaders, because you want to impress the leaders, because they are the father figures of the streets.
But you know, there's also another thing which is kind of like the unspoken part here, and that's the brotherhood. And there really is a brotherhood that exists. And that brotherhood is really strong, and the bonds between those guys, because you depend on them for your life.
Gangs in those days, in that era, the late 60s, early 70s, we wore gang jackets. That's how we identified ourselves.
Clayton has your jacket, doesn't he? Now let's look at this jacket here.
The rockers, and then you have the letters. To us, this was our symbolism, all right? Each color in our gang had a symbol. The red actually symbolized the blood of our enemies. The black letters symbolized the death of our enemies. The swastika had nothing to do with anti-Semitism, or it had nothing to do with Hitler, the KKK, Hitler, or anything. But it symbolized, again, like the letters, black. The black swastika, death to our enemy. Red swastika, the blood of our enemies. The cross symbolized the protection that is found in the unity within the brotherhood.
And then the bottom rocker generally tells you where you're from. And in this case it says nomads, which means that it's traveling and can be anywhere. And these are Cochise's original drawings. So he drew and designed the letters and everything. And this was the president's jacket, which is now part of the Outlaw Art Museum.
We were the last of the old street gang to wear colors.
You have that jacket on, you have those tattoos, it's like, whoa, this guy's dangerous.
I I knew about Clayton Patterson because we used to see him in the park. I mean, this guy was the guy who looked like a biker dressed in black with a skull cap and a camera. We always saw this guy in the park. But he was always click, click, click. And so one day, one of our members, Rocco, was hooked up with this squatter chick. I mean, she was a punk rocker. She was nice. You know what I mean? She looked nice, but she was a junkie. And so she started bad-mouthing Clayton.
She was a troublemaker, too.
She was a troublemaker. She was one of those girls that can really get you hurt, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so she's telling Rocco, who happens to be a renowned member of the club, you understand that Clayton is taking the pictures and he's giving them to the cops. You know, so I said, wow, when Rocco told me, I said, what? You know, so I said, all right, let's go check this guy out, you know? So me and some of the guys, we come over, you know, we come over to Exit Street, you understand? They told us where Clayton lived. So I knock on the door, and then there's this guy dressed in black again with the camera. You know, he opens the door. I say, are you Clayton Patterson? He says, that's me. And so I told him, you know, straightforward. I said, listen, man, I hate you taking pictures and giving the pictures to the cops. You know, taking pictures of the people in the park.
So you got to see how I feel. I got these 3 thugs outside dressed in colors, banging on my door. Bang, bang, bang. Yo, what's up? And it's like, you know, and Cochise could be a very serious guy. So this had a whole sort of serious aspect to it. And he's sitting over there with his 2 guys with him.
We laugh about it now.
Laugh about it now, but it had a whole sort of element of danger attached to it at that point. And it's kind of like, you know, and I'm here. Obviously, everybody knows where I live and whatever. And it's like, so now we got this little confrontation thing going on. And it's kind of like the thing where truth prevails.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what he told me, how his footages, his documentation had helped people, and how many cops were indicted.
So it was easy. I mean, he understood that I wasn't there, you know, using that to catch people, to give it to the police. Because had I been doing that, I mean, I would have been dead.
But as he spoke, something in me told me, this man is telling the truth, this man is innocent. And I understood that this girl just wanted an innocent man hurt. So we went back to Tompkins Square Park. And at that time, we had members living in that park, like Spider and Mantis. I approached Mantis, and Mantis just spoke, I mean, positive about Clayton. You know, I mean, their friendship and how his footages has helped people, has not damaged in any way the movement of the protesters in the park and the anti-gentrification stuff that was going on, the homeless protesters, you know, people that were protesting the homeless situation. And then more people came up to me and say, no, man, Clayton is the man, he's for the people, you know. There's no, the guy's not selling us out, you know. So now I knew that this woman was a liar, and I told Rocco, get rid of this chick. You know, we went over at the squat where she was at, we took her building, and we kicked her out.
Now, at 11, you're robbing from bodegas and stealing hubcaps.
When I was younger.
When you're the leader, what's an average day involved?
When you're a leader of a gang, okay, you basically tell your soldiers what to do. You understand? If there's money to be made, you know, you just tell them, listen, it's an empty table right here. I want you to go out and bring me some money. You understand? And they go out and they do what they have to do, man, to fill that table with money.
What's motivating you to stay in that gang life? Because it is not a safe life.
Then I want to be truthful, I really do, because I want to make a difference. Even though I was a leader and I had a small army, a contingent of soldiers there with me, because that's what we call them, gang members, there was this fear in my heart. All right? I believe that every gang leader has that. You understand that at any time, regardless of who you are, you can be taken out. Okay? Betrayal can occur at any time, even among your own brothers. All right, so it's not always the guy across the street that you got to look out for. I heard that saying. It's the one that's always hugging you and patting you in the back. So what you got to worry about. So there's always a lot of betrayal that goes on with the gangs. I'll give you an example. I spent 18 years in prison, my 3rd bid, because I threw 2 members of my gang into the East River. We stabbed them up and threw them into the East River for the simple fact that they wanted to quit the gang. We stabbed them up and we threw them into the East River. They were begging for their lives. I thought a lot about that when I was in prison. You know, and I kept saying to myself, what what have you become? But I was at that stage in my life, even though I was a gang leader, and there was fear, I didn't want to lose what I had. And so I threw bodies in the river.
I mean, thank God they didn't die.
And I thank God that they did not die, they lived. All right, but I spent 18 years in prison trying to change my life. I became a counselor in prison. I spoke to young kids, gang members, Latin Kings, Nietas, Trinitarios, Crips, Bloods. I've been there and I know that. I can talk to kids and they may be in gangs or about to get into trouble. I can relate to that because I was there.
Now, when you're in prison, after literally knifing your own guys, what was it that really made you change? And what was so different?
The horrific nature of the crime.
Weren't you seeing crimes like that every day?
I saw it every day, but I saw the cries. I was up close. These were people that hung out with us. These were people that were part of the brotherhood, that we were supposed to protect each other, that we were supposed to die for one another. This is one of the things that we said to each other. You know, you're my brother. Once you're wearing those colors, you're my brother. I'm going to die for you, man. But in reality, that was all a lie. So we were living a lie. The Satan sinners were so a lie. I was a leader, yes, but I was a liar. It was like this darkness that was consuming me. And there were times at home where I would open the window and look up to the stars and say, I want to change, I want to change. But I had this persona that I had to protect.
Why did you have to protect it? And what was driving it?
That was that thing that, again, it just wouldn't let go, and I wouldn't let go of it.
Why did you let go of it when you were in jail?
I just didn't hurt myself by putting myself in prison. I hurt not just my accusers, but my own family. These kids that were following me, these people, members of my gang that follows me, also wound up in prison too.
You know, there was something about Cochise that I always sort of was inspired by, and I always thought he was an extremely creative person.
What was it that you were seeing in Cochise?
I found within the gang world and within that world, I found a lot of people that I found were really actually compassionate people, were creative people, had a lot of things to give, but because of circumstances and growing up the way they did and whatever, they got into gangs. And I think after sort of meeting Cochise and seeing this whole sort of creative side to him, a lot of it was just intuitive on my part, and the fact that he designed those collars, I thought, wow, this is a guy who's like highly creative. So there's a lot of goodness and spiritual side to art that's, you know, reaches the soul.
Simon, Clayton mentioned art. Okay? When I was still in the centers, just before I went to prison, we used to have the club that he mentioned, the casita, which is Spanish for like a little house, a shack. And I painted it black, and I did all sorts of designs. I painted skull figures, skeletons. I painted cemeteries in the shack, tombs. So when I went to prison, one of the last things Clayton said to me was, Cochise, don't forget your art. Do art. Do art. Do art. And that stayed with me. Do art. Do art. So I took all these other programs in prison, but I always did art. And I shared that art with those young kids, with those young brothers in prison. You understand? And they in turn would share it with their children, and they would bring laughter and happiness, and that brought me peace.
If you had your life over again, what would be the situations and conditions that you would have as that 11-year-old that would allow you to get to where you would have wanted to have been as an adult?
Sometimes it takes a dark experience, man, to experience the light. Yeah, I saw a lot of dark things, outside of prison, inside of prison. But I saw good also. In a dark place, prison. There was this young kid, 17 years old. He was talking about committing suicide in his cell. And I'm talking to a friend. I don't know this young kid from Adam. And I'm telling my friend my story of how I changed my life while in prison, how I went from gangs to grace, so to speak. All right? And the kid was listening. And as I'm coming out of the cell, the young kid comes up to me, 17 years old, comes up to me. He says, you know, I was thinking about committing suicide, but I was listening to what you were saying to your friend. And he says, thank you. And ever since then, I hung out with that kid in that yard. We would walk the yard, and I would listen to everything he would say. And I would see his smile. Sometimes his smile would brighten that dark yard when a lot of violence took place. But all he needed was somebody to listen to. And I want to thank Clayton Patterson, man, for getting me involved with the art. He was the motivator, you know. He was the one that directed me towards that world.